So here we have Jack and Felix. He has been with us since, I would say, January of this year, and we are now in April. And this is going to be his first ride. This is the very beginning of the ride, and you'll notice Jack has the halter on. He does not have a bridle on the horse. And he also is only riding with one rein here initially. The reason for that is when you start a young horse, it's helpful to have the feel be quite familiar to them. We've done a lot on the ground with this horse, both Jack and I, in preparing him to ride. And the feel of the halter is something that he's responded to over and over and over. He understands what our feel means when we are maybe adding a little pressure to the halter on one side or the other. And this creates a lot of confidence because it's easy then for the horse to feel like they understand what's being asked, and it's something that's just very similar. You'll notice right there he's doing a lot of licking and chewing, so we know he's thinking about it. And as Jack is asking him to move out and around, he's opening his hand and he's having the halter rope apply pressure in a way that's out and away from Felix. This opens up the door in the direction he would like him to go and suggests that he moves forward. And this is exactly what this sort of thing feels like when we are presenting the same idea on the ground. The other thing that you'll notice is Jack is moving around a little bit and encouraging him to move. At this stage, Felix really doesn't know what the leg means. And you're looking to essentially make the right thing easy and the wrong thing difficult. So what you're doing is instead of telling the horse to go, you're making it uncomfortable for him to stay where he is. By making him come up with the answer, it's giving him a choice, and it is setting it up so the horse is more of a participant in the process rather than us making him do it. Then he'll mix this up with moments where he bends him around and rubs on his forehead, which is another thing that we've worked on the ground. Right now he's working with his rope and he's swinging it. This is another thing we've done when working with Felix on the ground. And it's a way to get them used to things, but then also if he decides to move, it allows us to use that energy. So not only are we helping him learn about being comfortable with the rope, but we are also setting a situation up where he might want to move, which is good for us anyway. So either way, it's a win. And right now, Felix would kind of like to stay. We've got this other horse here. He'd kind of like to stay and visit and maybe not continue moving, which is fine. And he's letting him stop and settle from time to time. But we want to eventually get him to move. So you're just trying to come up with scenarios that will help him find it. And in those scenarios, if he doesn't get the right answer, that's okay, because you're just using tools and using ideas as life experience for him to get him comfortable with the world as it is. Now Jack's going to make it a little more uncomfortable for him to stay in this area, and he's having to do a lot. But you'll notice that the rope connected to the halter is quite open. There's really not a lot of directing going on there. Jack's being a passenger. And as a passenger, you'll notice he's also sitting kind of deep and a little slouchy in the saddle. He's really trying to be a part of the saddle. So Felix is just wearing him, and it doesn't feel like he's perched up above him. It feels more like Jack's around him. And here's another spot where Felix is he's like, oh, I know these horses and I'd like to kind of hang out by the gate. So Jack will use this and he'll have him circle around and maybe change directions and circle the other way. And if Felix does get a little bit stuck, he's just going to work his rope. He'll maybe wiggle around in the saddle left to right. He'll work his leg a little bit and, tapping him on the hindquarters like that. And that's just setting it up so that Felix starts to move forward. And you'll notice when Felix does begin to move forward, Jack gets quiet. You can see just by his gait that he's got some tension, a little bit of apprehension of moving, and that's typical when they're doing this. So he's having him move forward a little bit and then allowing him to settle back down. And you'll see as he continues his ride, this concept is going to be something that he'll be using the whole ride. And again, it's something that we've used on the ground. And again, there's that swinging of the rope, and he's doing it to help Felix find movement. And then when Felix does move out, he's releasing the pressure. But if Felix doesn't move, that's okay as well, because he's getting used to something swinging around him. And that's a fantastic thing for a young horse to learn to tolerate and to be okay with. And you'll notice with his hand too, he's just leading out and opening it up. So we're really directing the attention and directing the life in the body and giving him a place to go. So he did actually get him out of that zone, and Felix started flowing a little bit more. And then we got to the place where we're in the arena. Now, this is again where we bring the life up and then let it settle back down. And at this point in the ride, I had actually hopped on my horse and rode around just to help Felix have a horse to follow for a little while and get him a bit more comfortable. And actually, at this point in the ride, we had actually ridden out on the trails with the two horses for maybe 5 minutes, not very long, just to get them going somewhere. And before we went out on the trails, Jack did tie the reins, so now he's got a lead rope on both sides. And what you'll see is Jack going in funny positions and leaning back. And those of you that have had horses in with us for training know all about this, because your horses have gotten used to this sort of thing. But it's another way to get the horses just comfortable with a rider being out of position. And that's super important. And if you introduce it from the beginning, it's just ordinary. And what he's doing is he's trying to get Felix to liven up, go somewhere. And when he's asking him to liven up, he's really hunkering into the saddle and becoming a part of Felix, so that Felix feels like he's just right there. And then he'll find places, and using my horse is a tool that he has right now. So he's going to use my horse to allow Felix to find a place to stop and settle. And you'll notice when he does have him stop and settle, he's really using his body. So he's not pulling on the reins. He might help suggest with the rein, and he might give a little feel that indicates to slow down. But what he will do is he will use the body and the life in his body to communicate to Felix that he should slow down. And we're not doing that quite yet. He's just getting some free flowing forward movement at this point. But you'll see in a moment he will have him stop and settle. Moving a young horse initially is real important, because in the forward movement you're a lot less apt to get things where they maybe would buck or get nervous, rear, those sorts of things. When horses feel like they can move, it really relaxes them. And it's counterintuitive for people, because we're a little nervous when initially riding young horses to ask them to move out. But when they feel that there's some restriction where we're not allowing that sort of thing, it puts them in a place where now they get a little bit, unsettled and a little bit tight and a little bit stuck, and those are the times where they're more apt to buck or rear. And you could see there Jack kind of had leaned back and rubbed him on the hindquarters to get him to stop and settle, and then he'll do the same thing in here. And I think right in here, this is where he's giving Felix a little bit more of a break, and you can see Felix is a little unsure, but he's in tune, right? His ears are flicking back and forth. And then Jack's using the saddle strings to just encourage him to move off. And it's not in a mean way or anything like that. It's just saying, hey, if you stay here, there's going to be a little commotion on your back. And you can see Jack leaning back, rubbing his hindquarters. And really, that's working out quite nicely. Felix is finding his way to the halt and slowing down when Jack gets back in there, which is fantastic. And if Felix had continued on, Jack would just stay in there. So it's good either way. And it has to, when you're riding these young horses, you have to be a little bit of a passenger. You can't have too high of expectations. Now, as we move forward in the videos, you're going to start to see a little bit more where he's going to ride him off into the field and on the berm and those sorts of things. And that really brings back memories for me of riding out in Arizona. We worked for a colt starting company out at Lee Smith's ranch, and she had a 77,000 acre ranch. And I remember, you'd start these horses and you'd go with like a more advanced horse and you just go take them out and you'd ride in the washes, ride down the trails. Actually, there weren't trails. You'd just ride off in any direction, which was fantastic. And it really was a great training aid because it was so natural for the horses to just go along and be interested and line out and do what you want. There was even a time where I was ponying a young horse and I had the saddle on her and I was riding my horse, and he was a good guy, and he knew his job when ponying a young horse and that sort of thing. And he was doing great. We probably rode maybe 5-10 miles out, and this young mare was getting close to the point where I was going to start her. And I thought, you know what? Before we turn around and head back home, I'm going to switch horses. And so I hopped on her. I ponied my horse with her, and then we rode back to, we actually had the trailer out that time. We rode back to the trailer. The ranch was huge, so you'd have to like trailer out to different areas of the ranch just to go see different scenery. And we had a 6-horse trailer, so we just loaded up, and some of them had to stop and sit in the trailer for a while we rode the others, and it was a good experience. But anyway, that mare's first ride was, we just rode back to the trailer, walk, trot, canter. She knew where she was going. My horse was with her. She felt confident. And when they're in an environment where there's some terrain, they really have to focus and think, which is helpful because then it gives you an opportunity to direct that thought process. So I believe that's the end of the ride. There's a little bit more, but I think that's about it. I hope you all enjoyed, though, and I will see you in the next video.